Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Shred the Veil, where we question the narrative to see what's going on behind the scenes. Today we're going to have Justin Merkin on the show, and he's going to be talking with us about contact with the other side and JFK. It's kind of an interesting combination. But Derek had an interesting experience a few years back that he's going to go into with both of those topics. So I'll let Derek kind of set the stage on how this all occurred and where we're going with this.
Yeah, I'll just say right off the bat, I think we might lose maybe at least half of the people that follow us or look at this kind of information because it's so out there. It seems like an extraordinary experience. And, I just want to tell people as much as I can as what happened to the actual event. And you can take it or leave it. It's up to you to decide if it's true or not. But I would feel I'd feel like I'm doing a disservice if I don't let this come out, because it was supposedly what happened was I had a friend that was into like tarot cards and into kind of messaging like through a Ouija boards. They had that, so it wasn't uncommon for them, for her, and she had two daughters actually, so she was older, and she was a very well known, very high up in her profession. She was in the medical industry, so it's not like she was just some random person off the street that not a crackpot or anything like that. But she was very well respected in her career, and she just happened to do this kind of stuff. And I knew her and her daughters fairly well, and so I would observe sometimes when they would do these little sessions, and they would try to communicate with their dead relatives. And I had tried when I was a kid before and things like that, but I never got any real results trying to use the Ouija. And I wouldn't recommend people messing around with it. I'm just going to say that, like, this is stuff you really should take seriously. I mean, it's basically like a door that you're opening up for other beings to come in. And so I would almost before I get into it, like a way of describing it is it's like a doorway that you're calling out for a certain entity or being or person that, loved one that you've missed. And usually the stronger you have that connection with that person, the stronger they're going to be able to reach you. But it's kind of like, I think it's more like a shouting match. Whoever's the strongest to be able to get their message in is going to be the one that comes through. So you literally have to be very careful. And I think it has to do with your energy, where you are, the people that you're with. I mean, if you're not in a good place, you're not in the right setting, you're not with the right people and environment, it could go terribly wrong. So like, this just happened to be like a very, very good instance where all the stars aligned. We were with the right people. I trusted these people. They're not like, they're not trying to scam me or make this out to be like, oh, this was some, we're going to play them and just pretend like this happened, because I asked them really detailed questions that I don't think they would have had any idea about. So anyway, it was very interesting. I have it all transcribed. So basically there was four of us all together. It was the older woman, her two daughters, and who are grown, we were all grown, and then it was me. And like I said, I had seen them doing messages with family, and it came through pretty clearly. Like within asking the question, within, I'd say just a few seconds, within 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you would see things start to move. And you're putting your fingers on this dial, right? This kind of
mouse,
if anybody knows.
Right.
Feel free to jump in and ask if you're.
No, I will.
But that's basically the premise, the preface of it, how it works, right? So you just barely put your fingertips on this thing, and and I'll say it like this: you don't just jump in and do it. You want to be sure you almost like clean the room, cleanse the area, like bless the
Right. It has to be an open space.
You make it a protective space. Basically, you almost say like a prayer or your intention before starting, and that is extremely important because, like I said, you don't know what's gonna be able to come through. And I'll just say I've never done any of this ever since this happened, because I was like, this is truly powerful stuff. I'm glad that it worked out in a way that it did, but I'm not going to mess with this anymore, because especially without the right people, and you're able to do that. So I'm just trying to tell people this ahead of time so that they don't just jump in and try to recreate what happened. So anyway, we were able to do this. I was like, I really want to channel. I wanted to contact my family. It had nothing to do with JFK. I originally wanted to contact our grandfather, who wrote the book, Life with Cosmos Clearance. So that was the main reason for all of for me trying to come together with them and start to see who we could channel. They were channeling their family quite easily, but again, they were all related. They were all in. Like, I think there's certain aspects to this that really key factors that make it more easily for certain beings to come through and channel. But long story short, I tried to channel my grandfather and it wasn't really working. So that's why I just was like, out of the blue, it's like, all right, I've tried this a couple times now. We tried a few different times in different periods with the people that I knew. And I just wasn't getting any luck. So I was just like, all right, let's try JFK. If JFK is here, or I just asked the question, could we speak? I'd like to speak with you. Are you happen to be here? So anyway, I started to get these messages coming through. And that's the beginning of it. But I don't know. I was going to say also, Dan, you had some experience before we jump into what I was able to get out of the messaging. But yeah, with our other relatives that passed, our other grandfather, I believe, right? So if you want,
I had an experience through a medium, through mediumship. Kind of, I didn't know anything about it initially. There's this yoga studio that my wife teaches at, that we did a workshop at, where I played music and everything, and we got to know the owner. And we went to another one of her events that was a mediumship. So we went in with no expectations, not knowing this person or anything. And she came in, and there was about 15 of us. We sat in a circle, and she did, some energy clearing type stuff. And everyone was, kind of calm and a little meditated. And we all, and then she went around the room, and she was clairvoyant, so she could see things. And she said that what happens is you'll be able to see, typically it's relatives, people who have a connection to you that have passed. And so they'll show up, what she sees is standing behind you, and there will be different levels of how far back they are, depending on what generation they are from your lineage. And so with her visually seeing these things, a lot of things come through is symbols, or the entities kind of showing, trying to communicate something, signing things to her and stuff like that, to communicate messages. And I was a little skeptical, but they went around the room, and they had some really interesting people. I didn't know these people, but they had family members come through, and there was like some traumatic experiences that the entity was trying to communicate to them. And it was amazing that the details that they corroborated that, this really is truly me, and this is what happened in this situation. And it was really emotional for them to hear the events that were going on. And the first thing that she does when she's trying to contact them is to make sure there's some kind of authentication, so that to validate that this is right, this is truly the relative, and she's determine who the person is first of all, and what the relationship is. And so it was really interesting. And it came around to me, and she did see our grandfather, not Daniel Salter, but on our dad's side, other grandfather. And it was basically authenticating that this was him by various details of our family that she would have known. I never knew this woman before. So it was really interesting. And he didn't have any kind of major message or anything, just to that he's there, he's with us, and really that he said he was proud of us, you and I, and our sister and everything. So nothing really significant, but the authentication was there. The details that she was able to take from him to validate who he was. And subsequently, my wife and I really enjoyed it, and we hosted the same medium at our house for a mediumship with a lot of our friends. And again, none of our friends or my wife's family members knew this woman, and we came in, and she again went to some pretty in-depth stuff with a lot of the relatives, and it was mind-blowing to see it firsthand. Is really truly believing it. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you feel it when you're around someone who's doing that. I mean, it's your whole body is sort of on fire.
Exactly. It's energetic.
Yeah.
I'm convinced. I think there's something to it.
Oh yeah, I think all three of us are. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening with you, Derek? Like, what was your curiosity, and then tell us more about this, because.
Sure. Yeah. And that's really it. Like I knew that my brother had gone through that before and had a lot of success with getting actual communication. So I was like, wow, I really hope that I could get somebody come through. At least I didn't know of a medium or anything like that, but I had this friend, like I said, who really had been successful in communicating with their family. That was to the extent of who they were really trying to reach out to. And I think it really does make a difference when who you're trying to connect with. I mean, if it's a close member of the family, if there's some message they still want to relay and get across. And I think, seeing is believing. Like, you really have to be there. You have to go through the experience. I wouldn't have believed my own story. Like I would definitely be the most biggest skeptic of the whole idea if it hadn't happened to me. So
Right. Yeah.
Since it happened to me, I feel obligated to share it and tell people that, there could be something here. So anyway, to get to this, I guess, I wasn't having any luck. And I was going to say this too about the whole astral realm of things. Like why, if you're basically had gone through some trauma or something, and, think about it, like ghosts and hauntings and things usually happen where like a murder took place or some traumatic event, suicide, or they died some awful way, or they never got to fulfill their mission or their goal in life. Right. So JFK is a perfect example of somebody that had gone through that. And unfortunately, what a traumatic way to end. And I mean, what a pivotal, moment in history, and a pivotal president, and how significant that he could have, what a role he could have played if he'd still been alive. He's already made such an impact, maybe even more so with the assassination. But anyway, all of that kind of factored in, and I had really done some studying of him, and Justin, I know you did too, have done that. This was like 3 to 4 years ago, so it's a little rusty from like all the information I had been gathering, but I felt it pretty clear in my mind at the time. So I was like, well, my grandfather's not coming through. I'm just going to go ahead and ask for JFK. And I want to say that I have the transcription of what was said. So, like I said, there was 4 of us, three women and me, and we were all actually on the board asking. Basically, one person asked the questions, but you're all participating. All your fingers are on the middle dial to see what letters come up and what message comes through. And we had someone else, another friend, that was there to write down the letters as they come through. So you have a record of what was being said, what you asked, and then what was actually the message coming through. So you have that transcription of what he wrote down. And I tried to decipher it to the best of my ability. And I can go through and read what was said, and hopefully we can put this up later on, or it'll be available for people to see as we talk about it. So first of all, of course, I asked, after we did we had already been trying to communicate with their family members, so it was working successfully. We already started the session. We already cleared space and said our intentions, like we want positive or, loving forces to come through, all negative, everything else we were trying to block. So you do that whole, almost like a ceremony. And then after we knew we were getting messages through, they came to me and said, so who do you want to channel, or who do you want to communicate with? I said, my grandfather, Daniel Salter. We tried for a few moments. Nothing really happened. So I said, is JFK? Just out of the blue, I was like, so is JFK available? We got the answer, yes. So there's a yes and a no on the board. And there's all these letters. And hopefully we can show the board if nobody's seen it. But it went to yes within a few seconds. So I said, okay, I guess let's get started. So then I think not just me, but they wanted to ask about Marilyn. I think Marilyn came up. That was like the first question. And so I thought that would be kind of interesting to ask. So we asked basically, what did you tell Marilyn, or what secrets did you tell Marilyn? And the first thing that came up, and this was clearly like the words, it said, no state secrets. That's what came through. And sometimes the letters, they don't really complete a complete word. And sometimes you have to kind of guess, or there's a letter left out of the word, but you can make sense of it. So this one was very clear, no state secrets. So I guess you can interpret that as you want to, but maybe he's saying there were no significant, the state secrets revealed. He didn't go to those depths, or I'm not going to really speculate too much more on that one. But then we asked, was she killed for trying to reveal anything about UFOs? So I was always going the route of the UFOs after reading like books like Michael Sala's Kennedy's Last Stand, and this is the book I have here, and it goes through his whole and all the moving parts with Eisenhower, with the MJ-12 coming into play. JFK was very close to Forrestal, Secretary of Defense Forrestal. Right. We know
yes.
him.
Yeah, so he jumped out a window apparently in New Jersey, which when we say jumped out a window, we mean suicided.
He was suicided. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty obvious from all what happened.
Yeah. And that's a very of extreme significance. His whole story, his whole biographical line, and how it relates to all this information. So, and
in the book it actually mentions he was part of the original MJ-12 group. I mean, a lot of just come up and said he must have been one of the original members. And then that ties into a lot of other key players that we'll go over soon. But this is kind of why I was bringing up the UFO subject, and I even mentions Forrestal as we go. So, so I was asking back to Marilyn, was she killed for trying to reveal anything about UFOs? This was also at the time that some CIA document was released, and actually Dr. Stephen Greer was talking about this. He recently was in the public view saying, look at this memo with the CIA saying Marilyn was going to give up this information on UFOs. So I brought that into the question, at least to JFK, supposedly, to this whole communication. But he said, no, it was suicide. And then I asked, was it a legitimate suicide? Was the suicide legit? And I got back not legit, but she was troubled. That's what the message that came back as. So, I think there probably was foul play one way or another, but she was obviously troubled. She was probably on the way out anyway. Like, I think she was heavily into whatever prescription drugs or whatever she did.
She drank all day long.
Yeah, all sorts of things. Right. So, I don't know any more details of that, but that was something we started with in the conversations of the communication. And then I asked, just in general, any regrets? This one wasn't a clear message. It just was VUNNO. So I don't know how to really interpret that other than maybe vulnerable, like the mix, and maybe vulnerable and maybe no, like both of those words. That's maybe the only thing I could get out of it, Any regrets? I don't know what else it could have mean. Anybody?
An acronym for something that were.
Yeah, maybe. And that's where I want people to help me, because some of this messages are not clear, and I think we could help each other if some people look into this. So that was what he said on that. And then because it wasn't a clear message, I asked again, is this JFK? And we got the answer, yes. So that's always a good idea if you're not getting clear messages. The next one was, what is the most important message you would like to share? And we got a clear message that said dark money. So then I asked right after that, who's dark money? And we got the initials or the letters EST, and that was it. So I took that from what I knew and researched, but I took that as establishment, just as the establishment, or possible. Like the does that make sense?
Sure, it does. Yeah.
Like deep state, maybe Federal Reserve. Like we knew from what he was trying to do back then was basically get rid of the Federal Reserve, create his own currency, basically get off the need of the Federal Reserve. So you can see how much that might upset the balance of things. And
without question.
Yeah. I think that was a big part of what came to his demise. But we can see that this UFO topic, I think, was also a big part of it in coming to light with other researchers. But anyway, I knew he was tied to Eisenhower and Forrestal. So I went to the next question of, what was Eisenhower's message to you? And we got back SNOT, the number 2, TALK. So basically, I would take that as saying it would said not to talk if you just go with the S, or if you take out the S, it's talk. So that's basically what the message came out as. So I think that makes sense. Eisenhower's basically saying, warning him, look, this is way over your head. Do not, start.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Go into this more.
Not much was going on with Eisenhower at the time. I think that's another hidden reality. It's like, not only was there a lot going on behind JFK when JFK was elected, but there was so much going on behind Eisenhower's world. And so people forget that Richard Nixon was the vice president for Dwight Eisenhower and was actually the person who was picking all the scientists for Operation Paperclip in the early 1950s. So there's like this network of intrigue that is very, very deep at that time.
Right. And so that, I think that leads, and people don't realize that Kennedy was really tied to this from the beginning. Like he was in naval intelligence.
Yes, which is the highest form of military intelligence.
Right. So at the end of World War II, he actually, and this is part of the book, Michael Sala's book, he went to Europe, to Germany with Forrestal, of all people. Like he was like the protege. He was like under his wing, basically. Forrestal said, look, this is during Operation Paperclip and all this, he was there to look at basically all the camps, saw that what the Germans were working on, some of this classified information. So who knows how much he was really told, but they were close friends. Kennedy were very close.
Well, also the whole circle of Kennedy's relationships with Nixon. So Nixon and Kennedy, what people don't realize is that they were actually friends, and that Kennedy was really learning a lot from him when Nixon was vice president and he was in the Senate. And there was several trips they took together. A lot of it had to do with the Marshall Plan and foreign policy, and Kennedy learning about foreign policy. And the person who replaced John Foster Dulles, Christian Herter, was basically the most connected of the old establishment money people in America and from Boston. The whole Brahmin Boston crowd. So anything Christian Herter decided to do, the crowd in Boston who had all the money and all the power, would go with. And he's the one who Nixon thought was going to support him. And he actually told everyone in Boston, you need to support Kennedy. So something happened in that transfer as well. That's very hard because Herter is also really big behind the Marshall Plan. And that also relates to the fact that Kennedy lived part-time in Palm Beach during the winters. During that time, his neighbor was the Reitmans. The Reitmans were the head of Standard Oil.
Oh, wow.
Most powerful company basically in the world at that time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in the background around that time that they just, most people, when they talk about the Kennedys, like they never even get into the layers of stuff. And, also the neighbor of the Reitmans was Allen Dulles.
Right.
So, Allen Dulles was the Reitman's best friend. He was on their yacht in the summer vacationing with the Queen of Greece and people like that. And, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, like, Kennedy did not trust Allen Dulles. Like, he wouldn't tell if his ass was on fire, he wouldn't tell him where the hose was. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like he did not, and for good reason. And so, I was going on in the background, and Allen Dulles being the treacherous person that he really was. There are a lot of avenues of espionage that were going on.
And I'll just tie the dots or connect the dots real quick with Allen Dulles, because this is important, and people, I don't know if everybody knows this, but Allen Dulles, and I was just reading this, that of course he was the head of the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy was becoming into office, and Kennedy did not want Allen Dulles to be in charge anymore. He's the one who fired him from the CIA. And then guess what? Guess who, after his assassination, shortly after he even let Allen Dulles go, but who becomes the head of the Warren Commission to investigate the assassination of JFK? It's Allen Dulles.
Yeah.
Isn't that
And
a coincidence?
yeah, well, also remember Alan Dulles. One of the things that's really intriguing about what's going on in today's world, we just had some more JFK papers released by the Biden administration, which don't really point to anything of any real import. But Alan Dulles set up a shadow government in DC when he was fired by Kennedy, which he was blindsided by. He didn't see coming. And it was on Q Street. So I've always thought like this Q operation is a nod to, okay, you want to run your shadow government, we're going to run our shadow government. You see, so that's what the Q clearance stuff also ties into that, of course. But I've always thought they picked that name intentionally to scare the establishment, so to speak. That okay, we know what game you're playing. We know the ins and outs of your shadow government. So we'll do our own.
Wow. Okay. I just want to like feedback from Lorraine because it's now raining pretty hard. Is it okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. I just want to make sure. So it's like I've got this ominous rain coming in now that we're talking.
No. We're talking about the JFK assassination.
Yeah. So perfect.
Yeah, I gotcha.
but I guess getting back to this, no, it can go so deep, so deep.
Really can.
Information.
Yeah.
And there's so many, and I can't believe. Well, Dan, you said you never saw the movie JFK, right?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I need to
see. That to me is mind-boggling. I'm like, how can you not see that movie? It's such a good movie. It's such a, significant movie back in 91, 92. And that really led for the reason for people asking, hey, we need to open up these files. Why can't we view these files? I mean, it caused a shitstorm basically after that movie came. A lot of pressure, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's still every president since then has been asking, when they're basically demanding the government to like, hey, we need to open this up. And every administration is getting shut down and says, well, we got to wait a little longer. So that tells you like who really has the power, who has to say. And the CIA at the end of the day is always getting their way. And it's just such a obvious chain of events, what's happening and who are the players involved. So anyway, there was a lot of tangents I could have gone on there, but I don't want to go there yet. Let me finish. I'm about halfway through. It doesn't go much longer than that, but like you can see all these kind of ideas were racing in my mind as I'm asking these questions. I'm like, what can I ask him and hopefully get a good answer? So after that, I asked, what was Eisenhower's message? And so that's what I got. He said not to talk. So then the next one was, did they tell you everything classified related to UFOs, et cetera? That was kind of what I was at. The message came back, I was never viable. So in my understanding of what that means, I'm just doing what viable means. It kind of means in a way to be successful or feasible. Is it a feasible thing or to achieve in whatever task it is? So I was never viable, or I was never successful or maybe feasible in keeping those secrets. That could be one interpretation. Or I was never successful to finding out the truth of what those secrets were.
And your question was, did they tell you everything? So maybe he wasn't able to get access to everything.
Right. Exactly. I think he knew how far down it went. I mean, how much there was to the whole story, talking with Forrestal, and I don't know how much, but I'm sure he got intel from him. Eisenhower, of course, telling him, be careful of what you get into. And I mean, head of the army, Eisenhower, he knew, and our grandpa said Eisenhower was the closest to all of this.
I also see viable as being, he's not a viable entity to get that level of clearance because of being in the public spotlight. They probably wanted to keep away from him.
Right.
Really going on, which is a message sort of about how big the military industrial complex was even at that time.
Right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, his assassination was a clear message. So was Forrestal's, though. Forrestal being within even the deep military industrial, he was deep in it, involved. And he was taken out. So that was telling people who knew on the inside, if you want to ever talk about this publicly, you're done. Yeah. And a president, as far as the president's concerned, Eisenhower was definitely warned and definitely saw the direction it was headed and warned Kennedy, but Kennedy was still pushing to get even more information and to have it exposed and to expose the CIA. and dissolve it into 1,000 pieces. So the documentary that came out, 1,000 pieces on CIA. So that was his goal. That was his intention. There's a lot of things he was trying to do. And even during I asked something later, we'll get to that, but the Cold War, the space race, he didn't want a space race to happen against Russia. He actually wanted to join Khrushchev together to try to go to space. He wanted a joint venture. Like, why are we going to, fight over this? So
and remember what we know from your grandfather's book too, is that a lot of what was going on in the space race was public theater, because the Germans, Americans, and the Russians already had been to space by the time Kennedy was president. So that theater would have disrupted, if we would have had the joint venture with the USSR, it would have disrupted their propaganda. Right?
And guess what? It would have meant that everything could now be made public because there's nobody fighting over anything. We're joining. Exactly. So the information would have been to the public. They didn't want that. They want, no, we have to be hush hush about all of this. So.
No, there's a lot to that, because the Cold War itself, which is probably one of my favorite subjects, the more you get into the different layers and nuances, the more you realize how much of it was a theatrical construct to what is in 1984, the book by George Orwell, Eric Blair.
Yeah,
he says in it, like, all the history books have been rewritten, all this is this, all this is that, at the end, basically saying everything has been changed. You're no longer going to know history. And I always thought when I was a kid, like, because I was 14 in 1984, so like I remember reading it thinking to myself, oh, he was talking about the year 1984, and really he was talking about the year 1948 that he wrote the book.
Okay.
Literally, like, what I figured out was he was saying at that time history had already been changed so drastically, so much, you have no idea what's really going on. So it takes a long time to absorb that, because we're basing our lives off of this history that really didn't exist.
Exactly.
And the more you look into it, the deeper and deeper that goes. The gravity of that statement really stands with me much more. Right.
I just saw the Tartaria episode you did with Sasha Stone, right?
Yeah. That
so talk about
it. Yeah, fits a lot into it, because, like, with this whole Tartarian nation, there was a CIA document from 1953 that I'm trying to remember who wrote it, but it says basically the Soviets are writing Tartaria out of their history. It's but we wrote Tartaria out of our history too.
So that's a long time ago, yeah.
Right. So it's really hard to. There are a lot of interesting. Michelle Gibson is someone I would recommend on YouTube for this, but it's very hard to understand what happened with Tartaria, because it was in the United States, and we had different coins, and we had a different. I mean, there was a whole different. We had air travel. I mean, there's the
airships, the big airships.
Yes, there's crazy stuff that's been kept from us, and there are remnants of it. But because we don't understand the spine of the narrative, we can't put together the clues about what happened, like these orphan trains, like the sudden disappearance of all these people. There's one particular guy on YouTube, I think he's Russian, and remember, Russia, their history is not as, it's ironic, their history is not as censored as ours. So that's something that we need to consider. It's like, their most recent history might be, but like some of the historical stuff that's come out about their past that had been wiped out is actually not as censored. And one of the things that he believes is that we actually had an atomic explosion in 1860.
Really?
Which is really far out. But when you start to look at what the evidence to support that, the mud floods and everything like that, it really gives pause, because you begin to think, well, how could a global event, because what he's postulating is that there was an atomic explosion and, like, literally the sun was blocked out for 2 to 3 years. Wow. So we lived in an altered state, basically, with nuclear, fusion in the air and fallout. And the Russian forests all are from the same era. They're from about 200 years ago, 150 years ago. So these forests, then that means the forests were wiped out. Like, we're talking about these grand forests. So there's a lot of interesting things to investigate that. But let's get back to your
Yeah. No, that's good. I love it.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. So next one. Did they tell you everything? Classified. That was never viable. Did you know that your days were numbered? He said automatically, yes. He knew his days were, he was going to probably end up getting killed for what he was trying to do, what he's trying to talk about. I asked, what did Forrestal tell you? And I got back, he did lots of off radar.
Radar?
Yeah, it came back as off radar, but I assumed it meant radar.
Yeah.
So basically I said it must have been he told me lots under the radar, or maybe he did lots under the radar, not in the public view. I mean,
right.
Maybe one or both. So that was the one. And then, were you focused on going to the moon and what might be revealed in the end? He said, I was less concerned with the moon. So I think at the end of the day, I mean, the space race was one thing. I don't know if he knew, there's already bases over there that we're going to find these things there. He probably wasn't read into all that, but he probably wasn't surprised if it was true, or who knows? I don't know. But
let's also remember William Topton's comment about the moon, right?
Yeah.
So, he could know. I mean, just imagine that's so for people who don't know that, William Tompkins basically said it's an alien command center. It's artificial construct, and it's been there for 12,000 years, I think. And like, it influences our reality. It influences how we think, how we feel. And
David Icke says that. A lot of people talk about, yeah.
And that, so it's very hard for us to understand. If they had that knowledge then, like, where did that come from? There's a lot of questions that, so.
I agree. Yeah. So that I thought was worth asking, but I think, sounds like he's less concerned with everything going on, with what else. He just wanted to maybe break up. The money was a big factor, the way
Sure.
He knew the budget was out of control, and all the spending going to the military industrial complex, all of that. So, and I think there's much more on the ground to take care of, I'm sure is what he was trying to say. Were you trying to prevent the Cold War scenario? So this was kind of the final question I was asking, or that I got to ask anyway. So were you trying to prevent the Cold War scenario? What was the most important message regarding this topic? So anything he wanted to say about that. And so this is the longest message that came through, and the one that I still don't know the part how to decipher it. But he said, with intel, Barnabas, the word Barnabas, Barnabus, with intel, Barnabas, great B. That was one part of it. And then it kind of like stopped. We stopped getting anything coming through. And then again, it started again and said, for the people, no garish, Garish, no garish, no more garish. So it was like twice. A mere lead pulse of the nation. I mean, this is literally what's coming through. And then votes don't matter. No age will teach no, no age will teach no. And maybe he meant no age will teach no one. I don't know, but then it just stopped. So think about that. Think about, like, the first one, no idea what he's saying. And I'd still like somebody to hope.
Some sort of code, yeah.
Yeah, it's a name. It's something to do with the war. I don't know.
And your question was, what's the most important message regarding the Cold War? And was he trying to prevent it? Okay, interesting.
Right. And so he said, a mere lead pulse of the nation. Votes don't matter. Like, think about how important that message is. Votes don't matter.
Yeah.
Imagine him. And this was done about 4 years ago. But I really do think, I would feel bad if I didn't get this out to the world and share it and see what they think of it. But so that was the last real big message. And then I think because we weren't getting anything, the people I were with, they were like, well, let's ask about Jacqueline, or let's go back to Marilyn and Jacqueline. So they asked, is Jacqueline with you? Something more simple. And so basically we got back, she is dead. Yes, that's what we got back. So that's an interesting way to put it. So maybe she passed over, maybe she was beyond the astral realm, but I don't know. And the last question after that was Marilyn. We asked the same thing. Marilyn, is she with you or passed over? and we got back no. So I think that maybe the questioning wasn't too clear, maybe for either, whether they were, obviously they're dead, but are they with you or not with you, and that's where that whole astral realm thing comes into play. Like, are they stuck in between, or are they completely passed over? Kind of those kind of questions.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much, God, there's so much to it. I mean, there's so much that happened that is not the way we think it happened regarding Kennedy's whole life. And I really am beginning to think that the files that were released by the CIA years ago and now, that a lot of them are doctored and a lot of them aren't real. Because there's a pattern of them trying to make him out to be a certain person that doesn't really seem to add up with other things. And I'm really beginning to wonder if like that's where they were putting a lot of their resources into creating this false narrative years ago before the Warren Commission, so that they're thinking years and years ahead, that slowly it's like a poison pill effect. It's like slowly people get more and more poisoned as to who they think JFK was. One thing that our friend Nancy Red Star told me was that Marilyn and Kennedy had met years before in Arkansas than what people think. And I don't know what that means, but it also, she says that Kennedy's lineage is not what you think it is. It's a hidden lineage, and he comes from a royal bloodline. Now that's important because
that makes sense.
Everything is based on bloodlines.
Yeah.
And bloodlines that are hidden from us. So, for instance,
it's connected.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, but just for instance, I think like if we don't really know where they're really from and what their bloodline really represents, we really don't know the arena. And that's the whole thing about the deep state and how the deep state has worked for thousands of years, is you keep the real pieces off the chessboard from public view. Everything we see in the public is theatrical, and if it's not deliberate, it gets appropriated or sabotaged or right. So it's interesting because we all have our prejudices and we don't want to believe such things exist. But I'll give an example. Like, it's like the Beatles. Like if you start to look into the Tavistock and the Beatles, you're not gonna. And I grew up loving the Beatles. I'm not trying to slight the Beatles, but it's definitely not the story you think it is. The more you look into it, it's much darker and weirder than you can imagine, right? And the Kennedy thing is really similar because, he's elected, and the state of the galactic reality that I think we were talking about, it was far more advanced than even what we think it is today. 60 years ago, it's almost like there's a sphere of our existence living far in the future compared to this, whatever it is this world is that we're inhabiting, and they know that, and somehow the cabal has access to this. And I think that the JFK story is so seminal because it's like a psychic wound that is so enormous that we cannot reconcile ourselves from it.
Yeah. I think you're right. And the bloodlines, like we already know, like they're tied, basically every president's tied to like the one king from England, like hundreds of years ago. Like that's found out. Besides, like
when he says votes don't matter, that's what I kind of take it as. Is like, it's like there's a reality beyond the public that controls everything, and it's going to make sure it turns out to be a certain reality.
And they're, maybe like you said, they're meant to be the puppets. They're meant to be the ones on the stage to play the role, but back in the behind the scenes, this is what's really happening, right?
Well, it's the theatricality of it. Like you think it's the trick. I think is that they make you believe such things are organic events, and then once you buy into that, that's when you're mesmerized, and like they can program us with anything, and it's like if you really want to look into that subject in a very provable way, is if you look at the 60s, like the baby boomers in the 60s and the anti-war rebellion, all that was engineered. LSD, counterculture, all that was engineered. And they CIA created LSD. They tested it for 10 years before they put it out in the public, which is what, what MK Ultra was one of the reasons why it was set up. And, the social engineering as it comes out of this whole era is a very deliberate, it's actually a very profound, that was the real, that's the real canvas, that's the real stage of which, the deep state's been operating on. So, there's a reason why certain things are very prominent in our world, all the way down to Starbucks. Starbucks is apparently, the CIA is way behind Starbucks because what they wanted to do was create a daily habit where they could collate information about what people's behaviors were, who they were friends with.
Wow.
And I have that from 5 different people who told me that.
That's amazing.
Don't know each other, who all have some tie to that. So, this is things that are happening in plain sight that have been shaping our world. So JFK was in the nexus of the people who were creating that kind of matrix.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I never heard that about Starbucks, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, Facebook and Twitter are LifeLock, DARPA project, and they just turn them over. Like that's another thing of theatricality is they turn them over to people who they've been grooming for years for theatrical reasons, so that the public is focused on that. But imagine you're getting people to willfully turn over their information, create a network of friends, be tracked everywhere they go, be sold products to. It's the perfect way to escalate the deep state. And I think I might have mentioned this to you before in private, but I don't know if people realize this, but like the whole, when Edward Snowden came out and said, the United States is spying on its own citizens. Well, there was actually a gay couple that came out in 1959 or 1960 that were working for the NSA that said America spies on its own citizens. And the power was such that Alan Dulles could make sure that story never came into the US. But it was on, they defected to the Soviet Union and they gave a press conference about it. And it was all over European news, but it never made the American press.
Wow.
We were in 1954 in Pine Gap, Australia, we set up this command center that has been globally spying on the world ever since. So, this is what JFK, remember, he was probably learning those things as he was running for president,
Right.
So there was a lot. I mean, imagine a mass surveillance in late 1950s. Just the thought of that. I mean, there's a very famous story about Eisenhower when they were telling Eisenhower, this is what we're capable of. And he said, well, show me. And they said, okay, well, walk out to your backyard, and then the voice on the other end is like, you're standing at blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And he was completely freaked out because a satellite was able to see him from space, exactly where he was standing, where he was talking. So in Pennsylvania. Yeah. So there's a lot of supporting evidence out there about the things that we're talking about. And I guess the galactic reality that we're trying to discover underneath it is just so much more profound than what we've been led to believe.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I was going to make a note, I guess, maybe just of the Dark Journalist, what he came out with. He was saying the recent release was that the Kennedy files that were released, basically showing, oh yeah, so it's Oswald was definitely part of KGB and had ties to that, something like that. The Oswald story goes deep. I mean, Oswald,
very deep.
Yeah, he wasn't an idiot. He was very intelligent. He knew Russian very well, German very well, and I'm sure he did lots of things for the U.S. military-industrial complex, whatever agency, whatever intelligence. He was doing stuff for them, but he was at the end of the day a patsy, and was doing what he was told, but also doing what he was told as being set up as the fall boy.
Well, one thing we can always point to that people have a hard time wrapping their minds around is, when he gets killed, there's no blood.
Oh, really?
Shot and there's no blood. Look at the footage.
Yeah.
It's completely bizarre. And the earlier releases of when Trump was president of the Kennedy files, there are surveillance, CIA surveillance logs of watching Russians in Dallas who are spies. And they talk about what churches they belong to, where they work, how they're getting their surveillance. And the other thing about Oswald is that Oswald's handler for the CIA was some priest in Mexico City. And so these things don't add up at all. I think they're trying to keep everyone focused on Oswald, because Oswald was, like you said, I think designed from the very beginning to be the questionable person, of which we're always asking these intriguing questions about, when in fact it's a stalking horse. And I think that what really the evidence that really proves that is when he gets shot, there is no blood. So that's a theatrical event with Jack Ruby too, right? And that whole stuff. Why are all these different CIA people in Dallas during that weekend? And remember, they tried to kill Kennedy twice before that we know of. Miami, and I forget where the other city was, but literally, like, you had George Bush, James Angleton, and all there's these people who worked closely with them, Richard Helms. Why were they all in Dallas on that weekend? I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And in terms of their rationale.
Right.
So the Oswald thing is just like, the more you can pick at that, the more anyone picks at that one, the more you're going to find, like, I mean, Angleton knew everything about where he was, what he was doing. Jefferson Morley's books on this subject, The Ghost, about James Angleton, and the book Our Man in Mexico, I think it's called. There's so much evidence that he's uncovered about all that. So all that was a deliberate, theatrical construct, because they knew what they were, what they needed to have, right, espionage wise.
There was interesting.
Counterintelligence,
And there was interesting connections I just heard about of Oswald and his wife, but like being living close to or nearby, or knowing the owner of who was it, of the Bell helicopter and things like that.
Yeah,
very interesting connections that I don't know why would he had some connections for sure. I mean, some crazy nut. Why was he talking to all these people within the government, within CIA?
Exactly. And that JFK film, of course, has that one moment that I think really would stand out to anyone, is with Donald Sutherland's character is basically
Mr. X.
Mr. X explains to Jim Garrison, played by Kevin Costner, that there was a headline an hour before.
Yes, in Australia, right?
In Australia or New Zealand, that lone gunman kills American president. And there's also a parallel event in England where someone called 20 minutes before he was shot to a newspaper and said, "Be ready, it's about to happen." And basically predicts the whole thing as well. There's all kinds of weird stuff around that. It's like one of those events, like, it's so much bigger. This is just what we know, but it's really clear there's bigger things, like,
and I
died, like the Chinese claimed credit for killing him, but the American embassy in Sweden. I mean, it's like literally, like, there's just stacks of these weird things, Yeah.
That's what I told Dan. I said, look, that when it comes to this whole topic, there's a conspiracy on one hand to kill JFK. That's one, but there's also the conspiracy to cover it up, which is the biggest of all. I mean, to do that, it was a lot involved and a lot of people, moving parts, but nobody took credit for it. Like Mr. X says in the movie, there's no formal handshake. There's nothing. It's all done, with these hidden messages and codes that say, look, this is a go. We're going to go for it. You know what to do. I mean, but nobody gets to point the blame. No one person. And that's why in the movie JFK, Clay Shaw's the only one that is ever put on trial for the actual murder of JFK. And Garrison, the Attorney General in Louisiana, who did all that he could. I mean, he really went down to try to find out what was going on. unfortunately unsuccessful. But I saw this thing from Dark Journalist, I saw this, what was quoted from Garrison about it. He said at the end of the day, it all came back to the UFO file. And that's why Kennedy, when you look into it, it was a testimony to the Ramparts magazine back in the 60s or so. And basically what he told him was conspiracy was limited at the end of the day, limited to the aerospace wing of the military industrial complex. And the major three companies involved were Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and General Dynamics.
Right. Yeah.
So that was Garrison's final take. Yeah.
And don't underestimate the budget cuts that Kennedy called for in March of '63 either. In the wind. Defense contractors, big oil bankers, just conversations, nothing more. Then a call is made, maybe to someone like my superior officer.
And that's also really important because, so Clay Shaw is a member of this trade association called the New Orleans Trade Mart. New Orleans Trade Mart is actually a cover organization for an organization called Permindex. Permindex is actually the industrial wing of the Club of Rome. Okay, so that's the whole connection there. So the Club of Rome is basically the Jesuit Vatican who are rewriting history and manipulating history. And Permindex is literally like, so John DeMille, who was one of the heads of Permindex, one of the biggest art collectors in the history of the United States in Houston, has this enormous foundation, art foundation, was from France, was a big industrialist. And he's basically what is one of the heads of Permindex. And Permindex is basically the team that they're based out of Switzerland and Italy. And basically they were constructing these assassination squads in the 1950s. So yeah, it was pretty epic as to what was going on. And like all these people in the New Orleans Train Mart group were like what is now, I believe, D6. D6 is this whole branch of the CIA, MI5, different, and the Mossad that are hidden from even the CIA. It's like a cell within a cell, and it's like the national. It's like, so D6, for instance. Another thing that I think Kennedy was onto was D6 stole a lot of money from the Japanese at the end of World War II, a lot of gold. And so Wall Street, remember Dulles brothers, all from Wall Street. They helped create Wall Street. These are all the same people.
Yeah.
So that's how like this military industrial complex, was built, is that you have a cells within cells within cells. And the aerospace, the reason I'm making the point is that because the aerospace industry is very much the same. So it's just like they keep it at like, I mean, the joke about Lockheed Martin is they call it Lockheed Martian.
Right.
So, that gives you an idea of what's going on. It's like these military industrial complex companies are so much more, they're the real government, and they're living in a different universe.
Different world. Yeah, completely.
They really are.
Yeah, they said, I guess the head of Lockheed, and this is what Dr. Greer says when he talks about what was all of the disclosure witnesses, but the head of Lockheed, I think it was, that left in the 80s or 90s and said, we have the technology to take ET home. We already have that. Yeah.
Well, Reagan has a very famous moment where he showed ET to people in the White House before the movie came out. And he says, a lot of us know that this is a real story. And that's as far as he could push it.
The Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right?
Yeah. And when apparently, like, one of the reasons why
that's the Serpo, Project Serpo. It's what book written about that. Yeah,
exactly. And apparently one of the reasons why Bush tried to have him assassinated was because he wanted to come out and tell people there is other, we are living in a galactic reality, basically. And, and so, we have a pattern, of, and the thing with Bush is, of course, Bush is like, a lot of what I understand is that what we think about the Bush family and the whole lineage and everything, none of it's true. That's no construct, and that there's a much darker reality to the Bush family than what we've been led to believe about.
Oh, very much so. I mean,
who their origins are and what their real intent is and such.
you see family pictures of the Bushes with the Nazis. I mean, with Mengele.
Yeah.
Mengele was in the photo with these kids with George Bush Sr. as a kid or stuff like that. It's
Well, apparently even their name, is German, and apparently George Bush Sr. was actually born in Germany, which, of course, that's another thing in the Constitution. You're not allowed to become president if you're born in another country, which is why the whole thing with Obama, who was not born in the U.S. either, why that was such a big thing. But also Bill Clinton was not born in the U.S. either. So it just shows you that it's just
and on and on and on.
There's no adherence to that. That's for other people. But the Bush family, I don't know what their real last name is. I forgot what
was it. Harriman, tied to Harriman? Or?
It is tied to the Harriman. So that's another great thread because Pamela Harriman, who was very close to Winston Churchill and married his son, it really seems like she was because they were helping the Soviet, they were basically running the Cold War for this hidden organization that is in the document Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars.
Mm-hmm.
The Gotha line of this German blood, who I think is where the Bush family comes out of that line. And the Harrimans were really basically creating the whole theater so that the Cold War would exist. And Pamela Harriman is some connection to Bill Clinton, and I don't know. I'm not sure. Some say that's his real mom. There's all kinds of crazy stuff, but not when I say crazy, as a reality, not as a fiction. But hard to know what the reality is. But Pamela Harriman was the head of the DNC when Bill Clinton was nominated to become president of the United States, and that was a deal pre-cut with George Bush because. That it's in Sean Atwood's book about the drug wars because Bill Clinton was recruited by the Bushes and the CIA so that Arkansas would be like this theater of operations to bring all these drugs in to the U.S.
Yeah, American Made, that movie.
Exactly, which is what that book was based on. Yeah, so what the movie is based on. So these things are so deep and they really go back to the whole Kennedy era because the CIA, remember, was less than 10 years old when Kennedy became president.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say before we stop, I wanted to mention I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't mention Jim Marrs, who was he was the one that started the whole investigation of JFK assassination from the beginning after it happened. He's from Texas. That book he wrote, Crossfire or something, was what Oliver Stone based his movie on, or one of the biggest references, right? Yeah. So Jim Marrs is the one big in the disclosure movement. He was always been there. I have his book Rule by Secrecy, so he goes deep into those secret organizations and all the money that's mixed in and everything else. But I wanted to mention him, and I know we were talking before we started. This ties into the NASA, Nazis, the Black magicians, Scientology, all these Walt Disney.
Exactly. Yeah. Hold on for just a second. I gotta grab one.
Yeah, I know the one video we've found of our grandfather, he does talk about Jim Marrs and references his material, saying that basically it's the real deal. Yeah.
Exactly. He actually he taught at the University of Texas the whole JFK assassination for like 30 years. That's a class that he taught.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it's so if we get back into that whole era pre-JFK and the Operation Paperclip. So what we were talking about before was Operation Paperclip. The lawyer who was in charge of recruiting and identifying the Nazi doctors was Richard Nixon,
right?
Who was the vice president, Eisenhower's vice president. Who that's like he's just we just are hidden from view. But apparently, the Nixon presidency is full of things that we don't know about. And one of which is that I'm beginning to suspect is true. I'm trying to remember where I found this research, but I've had a couple of different people who think the same thing, is that the Nixon was also like Kennedy beginning to wake up and wanted to share with the public what was really going on to some degree, and was ousted by the CIA with that whole Watergate was a deliberate CIA operation. So, it begins to make more and more sense when you look at what was going on during Nixon's presidency. But, basically, one thing we are sure of is, like, if you would go back to Woodrow Wilson, let's just say Woodrow Wilson for the sake, or the Roosevelts or whatever.
When the Federal Reserve was
right,
beginning.
Exactly. Nothing since that point it's all been theatrical, and I mean, I'm sure before that too, but it's very provable in terms of what we can research on our own that some other entity has been running the U.S. for a long, long time.
I think the best recent book that came out was Brian Olson and Beyond Esoteric. I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to know how all the dots are connected from the last 100 years of
I'll have to read that.
Yeah, ties back to the Roman Catholic, the Church, the Vatican. The three powers, right? There's the financial comes out of England. The military comes out of the U.S. and the religion comes out of Italy. All three, the triad of power, basically.
Yeah.
And that's referenced actually in the Wingmakers a bit from the Neruda interviews too. So it's so funny. All of these things, even JFK is such a pivotal, like a dot on the board, and then all these pieces that you can find like a spider web connecting it. It's crazy.
It's quite amazing. I mean, he's such a seminal figure, and we also don't know a lot about him really, like, because if you do the research and you really see how much distortion has gone into creating this myth about him, you begin to question, what was it that he really wanted to do? Who was he? What was he really like? A lot of people who knew him died after he died.
What's that?
A lot of people who knew Kennedy died after he died in very weird ways. And
a lot of people
really were trying to cover up stuff.
Yeah, and also the people that were going to testify about what happened, what they knew about when it happened, the assassination, how did they mysteriously died, car crashes, suicides. Like, it's almost like the whole, like, now a modern version of that is the Clinton aspect. I mean, you look at the Clinton, I forget exactly whatever it was that to cover up the Clintons have been doing, but all the people connected to that event, mysteriously, the probability of that many suicides and deaths, whatever related, it's insane. It's 1 out of 1 million chance.
Yeah, and the thing with the Clintons too is, like, nothing about their story is real. I mean, Chelsea's not even Bill's daughter. Apparently, you want to get really weird about Hillary Clinton. Apparently, look at it, like, you can go and DuckDuckGo and say Hillary Rodham Clinton, high school to college, just see what comes up. Like, really? There's some weird. It is really, really out there, and apparently everything about Bill Clinton in particular is just totally. It's like Obama. It's like total made up fiction.
Yeah,
and clearly the CIA was behind the Clintons, because if you do any kind of research, and that's why they've been
same with Obama. I mean, it's obvious.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, with Obama, it's all you have to do is look at Lolo Soetoro.
Yes,
and it's over.
Yeah, I don't know. They're going to try to wipe that away from history. I'm surprised they haven't gotten rid of all the evidence, but it's out there.
It's out there.
And I was going to say, every president, isn't the best president. They've all done things that we don't like and could disagree with, for sure. And I'll just say about JFK, I mean, as a modern president still in modern times, like, I look at him I think he was one of the greatest. He's the best. He's my favorite because I didn't care what political party he was involved with. When I see what he was trying to do, it wasn't up towards because I'm a liberal, this is what I'm doing, or because I'm a Republican, this is what I'm doing. He was like, I'm doing this because it's the best for the country. It's the best for humanity to do this. So I'm doing it. Yeah. And so that's what he stood for. And I so appreciate what he was trying to do. And that just tells you what happens when you try to act in such a sincere way, in such a authentic way. And guess what the consequence is? There's going to be those people who really hold power that are going to take care of it. And And that
there's a
for the world.
reality, yeah, that's so hidden from us. And if you think back to, I mean, it ties into our whole view of the universe, and that's why I think this is so important to talk about, because we're talking about a universal, there's some sort of galactic reality which these people, this deep state, have access to, no actual reality, actual real history of, which they change around, they distort, they propagate and eliminate from history. So even our view of like ancient Rome and Greece and all that's distorted. I'm not saying certain things didn't happen, but I'm saying it didn't happen the way we think it happened, and there's a reason for that. They're trying to, and those are the forces that were behind his assassination. And you know, I think, I mean, there's so much for us to investigate and to go into next, but
I think that's,
but it's definitely JFK sort of the epicenter by which this all becomes transparent, because everything around JFK, you look into it, it's crazier and crazier what the real reality was behind it.
Yeah. So just to end on that, just one thing, Dan, you can give some closing thoughts, please, because if you have anything you want to share. I was going to say, if we can get a hold of Dr. Michael Sala, or if he can look at the.
Well, I think we can. He moved to Tennessee recently, so I think he might be a little bit more. He and Laura, I can go through Laura and try to get him, but
that'd be interesting. I'd like for him to see the message that I came out with. I mean, that was transcribed, and see if he can make sense of that last part of it.
Yeah, no, I think we should definitely try to do that. I mean, also have him talk about the book, and maybe he's learned more about the subject since he published the book. I mean, I think there's just so much, that's, for lack of a better term, it's been on the fringes of our society for so long, and now it's almost like it's moving into the center of it. And everything that's gone on with Trump and how Trump is tied into that, there's too many things that line up and that are tied together for this to be like, there's nothing random. Let me put it that way.
As you say that, there's this thunder that's coming in, like, so it's like telling me yeah, you're right.
well, I'll give you an example. I can't tell you who this is, but I have a first person story I'm close with, which is in 1995, a particularly famous person in Hollywood was meeting with Paul Wolfowitz, and who was a part of the Clinton administration. And all this person said to this friend of mine who was the employee of this person was, if Trump ever runs for president, there will be a civil war. 1995.
Wow.
Okay. So what is that?
And he was still a Democrat back then. He wasn't even on the Republican side. He was all right. Yeah. So it didn't matter what side he was going to run for. It just meant he was going to cause some trouble.
Exactly. And that they knew it.
Yeah. Wow.
That's humbling when you start thinking about stuff like that. Like, how can they know? But that's what I mean. It's these hidden realities. They know so much more than what they let on.
What are your thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, no, it was great conversation. I was trying to look up some of the stuff from your reading there. Garish, I looked up as it means offensively or distressingly bright or disturbingly vivid or excessive. So when you were saying it said no garish, no more garish. So I don't know what that meant, but interesting. But I think it's really interesting. We look at the going back to the UFO part of it, the current narrative that the Pentagon's releasing and what they're trying to put out there as the new alien threat as it's probably going to evolve into. Anything that they put out is obviously just a fabricated story, like we've been talking about. And because if they were to really tell us the truth, I mean, this is the whole basis of, JFK's assassination and everything was him trying to come forward with some information they didn't want to know, because the CIA and the military industrial complex and the aerospace programs were up to that level where they were already, beyond what anyone could fathom. And that's where I think when you talk about the dark money in your questions here, that's certainly a big part of it. And so there, over the last 50, 60, 70 years, it's been covering that up. So they're never going to come out with a disclosure that, of anything that's, the truth. And it's going to take, I don't know what it's going to take to ever get to that point. Just a lot of investigation from outside people, but yeah,
we're going to have to break it up.
Right. Stumble upon it. That it's
Yeah.
almost like accidental, right?
Yeah.
It's because it's so, and also thought about dark money was, I've realized this last year in doing research, it's like sometimes when people say dark money, it's like, they're talking about money that's not visible to us.
Yeah.
And that's actually the point. It's like there are trillions of dollars off book.
Yes.
And I know that exists from other people who know those families. And so you don't even know these families exist. And, so JFK's comments that much more potent in that way,
Well, I hope it gives some, I don't know, some credibility to what was said or how it came out, and that people find some meaning out of it, because I couldn't just go to my grave without sharing that, as crazy as a story as it is. And, and maybe only a small percentage of people will even be able to comprehend it or take it seriously, but that's fine. It's hopefully it'll be helpful and useful.
Oh, of course. No, it's great that you shared it, and I think it's opening up the door for more things for the show to investigate. Like we were talking about, there's a lot of it kind of opens up these avenues around that are really profound, and obviously that your grandfather was part of, really an extension of, but that we rarely talk about because our history has been so sanitized. Yeah.
I mean, if we were told the true story of science and everything else, and medicine, whatever topic, but like things like this conversation we're having wouldn't be so unbelievable if we were told the truth.
Right. Exactly.
Told the truth.
Exactly.
So, anyway,
Perfect.
that's how I want to say. Yeah.
Well,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, Justin, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah,
I definitely enjoyed listening to you guys, and I hope everyone out there also did. Until next time, keep shredding the veil.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. Government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.